So, along the lines of what you're just sharing about how powerful it would be for real estate agents if they had us sitting over their shoulders all day long watching what they're doing, or if the home seller was sitting over your shoulder watching all day to see what it was you were doing to get their home sold, to negotiate with other agents. I'll share with you that Lisa, my wife, she is a certified public accountant and has been since 1993. In that industry, their timesheets, because they're responsible for their billable hours to the various clients that they're helping with their tax matters, they keep track of who they are working with every 6 minutes. So for Lisa, she would look at the clock and she'd say, okay, it's 4:42 and I'm working on Darren's tax return. Okay, it's 4:48, I'm still working on Darren's tax return. It's, she would keep track of it. When she was done with Darren's tax return, she would mark the whole thing. She would just take her pen and go from here down to here. All that time, bill it to Darren. Then she's moving on to the next one. The interesting thing about that was what Lisa talks about all the time now is, she was billing out at about $300 an hour, and many people didn't want to see her on their tax return docket for too many minutes because she was so expensive. So she would have her assistants who were billing out at far lower rates, and then Lisa would jump in, spend 6 minutes, verify everything, and she was in and out of that file in 6 minutes. Okay, 6 minutes. Now she just charged them $30. It's 1/10 of her $300 an hour. All the other people, they can do what they need to do, but she's not going to be in there spending too terribly much time at $300 an hour. The interesting thing for real estate agents is that they'll be working on lead generation. They'll be working on following up and nurturing opportunities. They'll be working on negotiating a real estate transaction, but they're not really paying enough attention to how efficient they are or how focused they are when they're in a task. So they might be working on a comparative market analysis, for example. Then the phone rings. And so they're dealing with this matter. Then they change their computer. Now they're looking at something else. They're going to the public records. They're going into the MLS to look up property information for this person. And then they get off the call. And then they're like, now where was I? What was I doing? Oh yeah. And now they have to jump back in. Terribly inefficient and not really the very highest level. I mean, if we're talking about earning $1 million a year in GCI, you really have to concentrate, you need to focus, you need to time block your calendar, you need to be working in a very strategic way, or else the whole day is going to get away from you, and then the month and the year.
So so Lisa was an accountant since 1993 for a long period of time. I'd imagine when Lisa started, she wasn't earning $300 an hour.
No.
And that improved every year. So as Lisa's experience grew every year, her billable time and billable hours increased.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting? In real estate, we have agents that have been in real estate as long as 1993, 1995, 2000, 2005. Their hourly rate hasn't increased.
If at all.
If at all. Yet what we do know is that the median house prices has grown and grown and grown and grown. So whilst the house prices are going up, their income is actually going down and their time is actually decreasing, not increasing with the cost of living and CPI. So one of the key aspects of what we're going to help each and every agent with, Kevin, is exactly that, getting them to recognise that it's not about being busy. There's a lot of agents that are stuck in this busyness part, but because they're in this busyness all the time, they're actually not doing much business. we're going to decipher the two and actually start looking at the choices they're making, because it all comes back to a choice. Time to me is not time management, it's choice management. Now, when we learn to when we learn to utilize and choose to use our time effectively, we eradicate what is the second part, which is pain management. And the pain management comes when we don't utilize our time well, because then the things that we want to do, would love to do, would choose to do, we don't have time to do. It's a bit like there was a show many years ago with George Clooney. It was called Up in the Air. Did you ever see that show?
Of course.
It was a great show. And in between he was going around sacking people around America, and in between he'd do this public speech and he'd get on the lectern and he'd have this backpack. Do you remember the backpack?
Yes.
And he'd get it there, and it was the short of the story was every day he would keep putting things in his backpack for tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll get that done tomorrow. And sooner or later, this backpack is weighing him down. It's this continual weight weighing him down. And in real estate, we don't want to become that agent that keeps on deferring things off. And those things are usually our health or our relationships or the time for leisure activities, because we're not doing what we're choosing to doing. We're doing things by default. So when we create a structure around a schedule that we honour and commit to each day, our choices become far better. The schedule protects ourselves from ourselves. And without that schedule, like you mentioned, some great things around time blocking, etc., that's what it comes down to. When we have a schedule that we honour, we're protecting ourselves from our own avoidance tactics.
So powerful. It's amazing how many things we allow to get into our day that if we stopped and really thought it through, we would recognize that those distractions are really keeping us from our goals and our dreams. And yet we allow that to happen. And it could be a bad habit. Lisa and I were out walking recently, and a guy was smoking cigarettes in a public park where we were walking on a nice little nature trail. And Lisa's going like this, and he picked up on the message, and he's like, I'm sorry about that. But the reality of it is, he's choosing to have a bad habit, which is cigarette smoking. But it's also, medical problem. So when I was running real estate offices and I was hiring staff for our front desk, one of the questions I asked was, are you a cigarette smoker? And what's interesting about it, in terms of hiring policy, a cigarette smoker is not a protected class. I'm allowed to ask, are you a cigarette smoker? Now for me, if they were a cigarette smoker, I wasn't going to hire them, because they were going to be out getting a cigarette break right when the phone was ringing off the hook, right when I needed them to make copies, or whatever might be pressing. They were going to be out with their cigarette, and that was going to keep them from accomplishing the important tasks of the job. Now, if you're a real estate agent and you're a cigarette smoker, you might want to think twice about that. But it may not be cigarettes. Maybe it's some other vice or habit or distraction that you allow into your day.
Yeah, good point. I think there's a couple of things around that. There's certainly distraction and it's avoidance. Mm-hmm. And we avoid things. And a lot of that comes back to clarity and purpose and direction, and really having a mission each day about the things you want to get done. And that's where your schedule really protects you, because the schedule becomes a repeated set of behaviours that leads to high performance. And if I had $1 for every time I've been told I just don't have enough time, and my response has been the same for a long period of time, Kevin, it's really simple. None of us need more time. We just need more reasons to choose to use it wisely. And those that are making better choices with time aren't asking for more time. And we've all heard this before, but how is it that some people can acquire and do and fit so much into their day and others just seem not to? And I know I've been in that situation myself, where I've just been running around doing figure eights and unproductive, and I've been unstructured until it took a good woman to say, I can't work with you, it's just out of control. And that really got me to realise that I was impacting myself and getting away from the things I wanted to go towards purely because I was making bad choices when it came to time. I mean, a simple example is, going out to a listing appointment one a day versus going out to 3 or 4 in a day versus one every day for 4 days. Anything like that, so little things, having a seller communication meeting, having 5 over the course of one day, one the next, and putting them all 5 one after the next, saving hours and hours of time, and that all compounds over the week, over the month, over the quarter, over the year, and just little things that we can change with our time and our structure and our schedule. And that's where it all starts, is having a great schedule allows you to be great in other areas of your life.
You know what was interesting? Your comments reminded me of something one of my former managing brokers told me years and years ago, and that was, he asked me if I would take on this one leadership role in the local board of realtors. He wanted somebody from his office present there at the local board of realtors. And I found it to be a nice compliment, but I asked him, why are you asking me to do it? And he said, Kevin, you get so much stuff done that I know you will actually get this done too. If I ask somebody else, they probably won't consider it a high priority. But you get so much done that I know I can ask you to do something and it's not going to be too much on your plate. You will figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's so true. It's looking at time. Time is money. We always know about. It's the most important thing. It's the bank of the day. It's how much you're really investing in it. And I think as real estate agents, a lot of agents don't value their time as much as perhaps they could be valuing their time, or they don't really recognise or understand what their time is worth. And I had a similar to what you were saying before about Lisa and the CPA having, layers of support that were less or more affordable, should I say, for their clientele. I grew up with an older sister who was a lawyer, and when she started out doing her articles and worked up, as she got more experience, there was things that she dropped off, and she became more of a specialist, and so her day became less of that and more of that, because that was worth $1,000 of billable hours versus the little things. And I learned a lot about that, and I took that into my own real estate practice. I realised that there was listing, negotiating, and nurturing of clientele. There wasn't many things outside of that I really wanted to do, because I could have others do that and I could teach them to do that. And as they got good at that, I could elevate them. It was like a ladder system. They'd move up. The challenge for a lot of agents is being that agent that has to wear all those hats still after 2, 3, 5 and 10 years. And our goal really is to fast track that progression so you can elevate your hourly rate and you can start moving away from those activities that you've been doing considerably for a long period of time that you don't need to be doing anymore.
It's interesting what you said right there and what your sister experienced as a rising attorney. There were tasks in the accounting firm that the managing partners would not let Lisa do anymore. She was too valuable to keep doing that type of work. So when she was at her most efficient, she had probably about a dozen people working underneath her, and all she did was make certain that everything they did was correct. Her job was not to do all the grunt work anymore. She could look at it and see in 1 minute if their hour of effort was correct.
Yeah, right.
Now, an interesting thing that I'll share too, and some of the top agents who should be attending our upcoming training should probably be considering a little bit more if they're not already. And that is, what does having the very best strategies and systems cost you? In terms of, is it costing you money because these strategies and systems take money to afford and implement? Or is it costing you opportunities in terms of listings that you're not getting, service that you're not delivering, because you don't actually have the right systems in place to service the types of clients and the numbers of clients that you're trying to accomplish and serve. Again, going back to Lisa and her accounting practice, one day her computer was giving her grief, and she would just pick up the phone on her desk, call the computer guy who was down the hallway, and she'd say, "I need you." She'd hang up. He was over her shoulder in about 4 seconds. She said, "My computer keeps doing this, and I don't know what's going on with it." He said, "All right, why don't you go grab a coffee or something and let me work on this for a quick minute." She comes back about 8 minutes later. He's still working on it. He's like, "I don't know what's going wrong." She walked over to the managing partner's office and said to him, "My computer is giving me grief. I need a brand new computer today." He said, "Take mine. I'll go get you one." Now, he didn't necessarily go and get her one. He went and said, "All right, Judy, go get Lisa a brand new computer. She needs it today." Meanwhile, she's using mine. Why? Because Lisa does stuff on the computer. I do stuff on the phone. She can take my brand new computer. I'm okay for a few hours without a computer. But she cannot afford to not have the very best systems and strategies in terms of her computer, the programs that are on her computer. She can't go 8 minutes without that running the practice that she was running in her accounting firm. And yet we see real estate agents all the time struggling with things that they shouldn't be struggling with anymore, but they don't want to make the commitment to invest in themselves, invest in their tools, invest in their strategies, their systems, and really what I look at is their future.
It's a bit like the lobster in the water. The lobster in the water. The story, the lobster in the water. You can put a lobster in there and heat it up, and they won't try and get out because they're just acclimatized in real estate. We learn to survive, and unfortunately, a lot of us can get stuck at the survival part. And before we know it, that's where we are. We put this ceiling on. We can carry 2 listings at a time. We can carry 3 listings at a time. After that, we get set there. It's interesting if you have any assistants that work with you and they go away, you realise, geez, I can't operate without an assistant anymore. It's so hard when they're away. Probably a bit like at home. If Cindy, my wife, goes away, I'm like, gosh, I realise how much I've got to do and step up.
Yes.
And you think you're doing a bit as it is, but you recognise there's so many gaps there. And real estate's very similar. When you realise that you can have support and you can get leverage and that's taken away, it really takes you back a couple of pegs. But until you go down that path, you don't realise how much leverage and scalability you have as an agent until you go from a job mentality into that business world and back yourself in. There's very few people I know that do that and come back and go, yeah, I prefer to be where I was. There's always great opportunities that open up, and that's part of what we really want to support, guide, and help people with and encourage them to do going forward for their own careers.
I think it's really powerful that an agent who is a free market entrepreneur, they're an independent contractor. Yes, they might be affiliated with a really wonderful brokerage brand. Their broker might be very helpful. But at the end of the day, they alone are running their business. And really, it's a question of what am I setting aside from the revenues so that my expenses aren't just fulfilling my responsibilities, but my expenses are choices that I'm making so that I can really grow in the next 6 months, in the next quarter, in the next month, or really, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. The choices that people make today will have a really massive impact on where they are 12 months from now. But the reality of it is, you think back to what you were saying a moment ago, how many real estate agents do you and I know who are struggling to earn what they earned last year? They're hoping that they'll be able to make the same amount of money again. That's crazy. I'm
not a golfer. I know you've got a great story about your father and being a caddy and professional caddy, etc. And I remember when someone first taught me the power of compound interest or compounding in general, and it was through a golf analogy. It was like we'll play in golf and we'll put $1 on the first hole and we'll double it up. And, the second hole's worth $2 and the third hole's worth $4, etc., etc., etc. And I said, okay. And
that's a dangerous bet. That's a very dangerous bet.
Yeah. What do you think we're playing for when we come to the 18th hole?
Oh, I mean, you're getting pretty close to somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000.
Yeah, you're very close, Kevin, because I've done that. I've done the same thing in training sessions before with large teams, and people will say, $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. I can't remember the exact figure. It's been a while since I worked it out, but it's something like $131,000 from $1 compounding. So agents that are career, business-minded agents that are in the game or are planning to be on the game of real estate for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, just to use that simple analogy, if $1 doubled every year over the course of 18 years is worth over $130,000, what is a better choice around your time? What's one more hour a day of deep work, productivity worth to you over the course of 18 years? What's that worth?
Oh, it's priceless. When you really start to digest what you can accomplish, it's massive.
And that ties into the expenditure of going from the job mentality to the business world it's the opportunity cost, like you mentioned before. I'll never forget, I was doing a conference and I went out the front and there was a guy there that I saw inside the conference, and we had a quick chat, and I said, I'm going to the airport. And he said, yes. He says, Tommy's going to the airport. I said, so am I. And so I had a car organised to pick me up and go to the airport. And he says, I'm going to catch the bus. And I said, you're welcome to jump into me or get a car. Why don't you get a cab? And he says, it's actually much cheaper to get the bus. I said, okay. And I said, how long does the bus take to get to the airport? He goes, about 45 minutes because it stops it a few times. And when's the bus come? It comes in about 20 minutes. I said, okay, that's over an hour to get there. I said, it's going to cost me X, but it's going to get me there in 15 minutes. So I've saved 45 minutes. When I get to the airport, I can make calls in the car. I can do this in the car. So it's how are we looking at a situation?
Yeah.
And a cost of a VA or a cost of a PA is an investment. And every agent knows that, because when they're sitting down with the seller, they're asking for, they're always asking for an investment trust and something else. So I think it's really important that we recognise that either we're investing in ourselves or we're not. And
so
time
true.
is something we don't want to waste.
Well, time is the only resource we can't possibly get more of.
Yes.
And you think about, 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in each hour, that wonderful song, 525,600 minutes, which is from the Broadway musical Rent. That's exactly how many minutes there are in a year, 525,600 minutes. Immediately knock off a third of them, because those are those hours you're going to be sleeping. And then you're dealing with somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300,000 minutes a year that you get to make some smart choices. And when I consider some of the technology that's out there right now that can really just streamline so much of the work that a real estate agent needs to have, and they'll spend 7 months trying to figure out if they should get it, then they'll spend 5 more months trying to figure out which one should I get. And I'm looking at them like thinking, you're still trying to figure out what to get? I mean, you've lost all that opportunity time. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to overpay for it. It's like, no, I don't want you to overpay for it. But make a decision, make an investment, and then get that thing to deliver an ROI. But indecision for a month or 2 months or a year? I mean, I've had real estate agents brand new to the business, brand new to their local market area, who jumped in, took all the right action steps, and earned $250,000 in their very first year. But you know what they weren't doing? They weren't hemming and hawing, wondering, waiting to start. They were just jumping in and figuring it out as they went. And they were surrounding themselves with great people. I mean, that's somebody I was coaching. That was a person I was mentoring. So did they have an unfair advantage? Not really. They just took advantage of the advantage that they had.
Great point. Great point.
So if you're on the fence as to whether or not you should jump into our free training, sign up now. You will love it. It's our pleasure and honor to work with you, to share with you in the 1-hour training coming up on Thursday, some of the powerful strategies, the mindsets, the systems, the processes that we've used to help real estate agents achieve at a higher level.
Each and every day you have a choice to keep on doing the things that you're currently doing, but every change in life requires change. 2024 is the year that in 12 months' time you can look back on and say, I did it. I've made the change. I've made the jump. I've invested in the most important asset I have, which is myself. And by making these choices, change is inevitable. Make the choice, get on the call. We look forward to supporting you and achieve your aspirations in 2024.